You are listening to a recording from the Cooperating to Build a Better Nova Scotia conference in Halifax, a celebration marking the United Nations International Year of Cooperatives.
We're going to get started. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Paula Belliveau. I'm the Regional Manager for the RôLE and Co-op Secretariat. It's a division of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I'll be your facilitator for the session this morning. Je m'appelle Paula Belliveau, je suis la gestionnaire régionale pour le Secrétariat aux affaires rurales et aux coopératives. Je vais être l'animatrice pour la session ce matin. La session va avoir lieu dans les deux langues officielles. On aura une présentation en français et quelques présentations en anglais également. Donc, si vous avez besoin de la traduction simultanée, je vous encourage de procurer des écouteurs maintenant. The session will be a bilingual format, so if you require some listening devices, I encourage you to get them now. So what we're going to do this morning, we'll have 4 short presentations. We have a diverse number of speakers that'll be talking to us about succession and conversion of cooperatives. Basically what it is that the cooperative business model is an opportunity to be used when businesses need to change hands. So for example, a small corner store, the owner wants to retire or is no longer interested in continuing the business, may not be able to find a buyer, so a cooperative could come in and take over the operation of that business. Alors aujourd'hui, on va entendre des exemples de 3 coopératives qui ont été des conversions, qui ont été développées pour le développement ou la continuité d'entreprises. So 3 great examples, 3 different examples, and we'll start off our session with a presentation by Peter Hough. He's the financial officer of the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, and he's going to give us a bit of context in terms of what the succession and conversion of cooperatives means. And then we'll be followed by Debbie Raine, the manager of the Careforce Home Healthcare Worker Cooperative. So she'll talk about their cooperative and how that came to be. And then Bill Zimmerman, he's the former volunteer manager, and he's a board member of the Acadia Cinema Cooperative Limited. So he'll talk about their experiences at the cinema co-op. And last and not least, nous avons Birdie Leblanc, qui est membre du conseil de l'administration de la coopérative de Chéticamp. Alors, Birdie va nous parler de l'expérience d'une coopérative funéraire. Donc, we're going to have a wide range of experiences, 3 different co-ops, 3 different experiences, and we'll limit the presentations to about 10-12 minutes, and then we want to have interaction, questions, and discussion, because that's really where ideas and suggestions and people really learn, and we want more of an interactive format. So we're looking forward to your participation as well, so you're not just going to be sitting there taking it all in, but we also want your active participation once the presenters are done. So, sounds good. So, Peter.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula. My role is to give you a bit just of overview and context in terms of the kind of opportunity for cooperatives in terms of expanding the cooperative sector through conversions. And also the opportunity is very directly related to need that's been identified in the last 5-10 years in terms of succession for retiring business owners. So that's what I'm going to focus on. It's just trying to give some context. And then, of course, we'll get to the more interesting parts where we actually get to hear about 3 businesses that have done this and the kind of challenges and some of the things that have gone on with those particular businesses. So just to begin, the need, there's an increasing number of baby boomers. I guess the old white guys that Tom was talking about, or Larry was talking about in the early presentation. There's a whole segment of not just in Canada, but around the developed economies around the world, which is a huge number of folks that are looking to get out of their businesses in the next 5 to 10 years. And in the case of many situations, very few of them have actually started doing anything or doing any thinking about it. And so there's a challenge both from their side and the other side. So this just gives you an example in terms of this slide, the kind of numbers, and these might vary from different places to different place, but basically, you know, increasing numbers of business owners are heading towards retirement. Over 2 million jobs in Canada are at risk due to succession. So if you start putting that into the Canadian context and thinking about 2 million jobs are actually at risk if these businesses don't go through a successful succession, and what this would mean, particularly in local, smaller communities. It's one thing to have a business grow out of business in the City of Toronto where there's enough of a dynamic that it's going to be rapidly filled with other opportunities, other business scenarios. In many parts of Canada, that isn't going to be the case. So it really is a challenge that is facing us as a country, and this has been recognized by governments, both on I think the federal and provincial levels, many places across the country. So in terms of the particular focus in terms of this that I think is important for the cooperatives, it's not that there aren't opportunities in the cities, but it really is fundamentally basic to our rural parts of Canada, which means in Nova Scotia, as an example, most of our province. I mean, we only really have one major city in the province. So these rural communities are really dependent on these small enterprises for goods and services, for employment, for a sense of community, because without those activities, those communities have no reason to be and are in threat of drying up. We all notice that there's an increasing decline in rural economies, less provision of services, whether it's banking, whether it's small businesses closing. The community I'm from, Kentville, although it's a commercial center, there's lots of empty storefronts in our small community. So there really is a challenge in terms of this particular issue that we'll see that increase if we don't figure out how to address the challenges of succession. Sometimes these businesses are closing due to lack of profit opportunities. I mean, if it's a really extremely successful business, there's a good chance that someone will be interested in buying it. But even that's the case is that often the people interested in buying it aren't interested in the business, they're really interested in the market share of that business. And so, you know, I had actually a recent discussion with some folks in Ontario that were being approached by a business in a rural community that he actually did have a buyer for the business, but he didn't want to sell to that buyer, although it was essentially good for him because it was going to mean that all of his employees were going to lose their jobs. And so again, one of the issues is looking at how can we maintain these employment in our communities, not just from the benefit of the small business person, which many are embedded in their communities, want to support their communities, and don't want to see the business they've built and grown disappear simply for their own financial gain. So the kinds of conversions that are possible within the cooperative sector, I guess I've already said this, just in terms of the opportunity. Okay, so a crease, I'm looking at slides here and not at the screen, so I jumped one slide too far ahead here. So in terms of the opportunity, again, increased understanding of the role of small business in maintaining communities and particularly social capital. One of the things that we forget is that small businesses bring together people in their community. We meet in the stores, we talk to one another, we meet with the employees, we build those networks, and we come together in various other organizations because we've got this kind of business community in our communities. Certainly workers and other stakeholders are interested in maintaining their livelihoods and in some cases taking an ownership stake. And on government side and within the cooperative side, we actually do see some resources being devoted to maintaining and creating economic opportunities in rural communities. So in the government, it's an ongoing challenge always to figure out how to support rural development in rural communities. I've lived in Nova Scotia now for about 30 years, and it's been a constant discussion about how we maintain and develop rural communities, don't lose our youth, don't lose the basic structures in those communities. And this is just one more threat in terms of business closing for success, if there aren't succession plans that will make that more difficult. So now I'll go on to my next slide. So in terms of co-op conversions, there's a number of approaches that you can take, but I'm going to highlight 4 of them. One is where the employees of a business can take over that business. And some research I did about 5 or 6 years ago was very interesting. And this was statistics that came from Roynat Capital. And essentially, family successions had about a 35% success rate. Private business people buying a business that they hadn't been previously involved with had about a 50% success rate. And buyouts of management employees had a roughly 80% success rate. So one of the reasons of looking at employees in particular and management in particular as a group of buying out is the chances of them succeeding at maintaining that business in the community is much higher than the other 2 conventional options. Other people that could be involved would be vendors or sellers creating a producer co-op. So if you had, for instance, a food processing operation, it could be that maybe some of the suppliers in terms of farm providing the produce for that might look at that as a producer cooperative conversion. You can certainly do consumer conversions. In the UK, they've done a lot of small community stores. I think they now have a network of about 300 community stores that have been formed into cooperatives in small village stores to maintain essentially the local corner store, which was essential for, again, maintaining that spirit of that community. And lastly, community-owned cooperatives in which a broad base of different stakeholders, consumers, maybe some investors, purchase the business and maintain it in the community. You're going to hear some examples. These are just 3 that I'm personally familiar with, but 2 of them are going to be spoken of here. The Greenhouse Co-op is actually a business that I was involved in personally with my family and was converted to a worker cooperative about 20 years ago and is still operating very successfully in the community of St. Peter's. So key succession issues is success and options. So, the first stage for the business owner is to actually figure out, well, what are my opportunities and looking at that. And so in terms of looking at this as a service that you're providing to folks, it's really crucial that the people working with business owners understand what all of the options are and can outline that. In terms of the business owner has a whole set of issues that need to be addressed going around retirement. Some of them are financial in terms of, how am I actually going to get enough money out of my business to retire and maintain the living standard I've had. Some of them are psychological. I'm actually giving up something I've been doing probably for 30 years and put my heart and soul into, and now I'm making a transition to life, to a new life. So again, there's some challenges around that. There's business issues with any succession. Is it really a viable business going forward? You can maintain a business based on past contributions, past capital. The best way of getting the money out of that business may actually not be as a go-forward business. So there's some challenges around looking at business viability and the conflict between the owner actually wanting to get the maximum money out of that business, which may not be actually seeing the business continue, may see the business continue. So there's some issues around that. Other stakeholders are involved, so whether they're employees, whether they're customers, one of the key other stakeholders are family members, because with a business succession, you're actually talking about a change of situation within a family context. And so lots of issues come up in terms of making these kind of transitions that can be challenging within the family environment and also with external stakeholders. Timing is another crucial one, and just, these things don't happen overnight. Generally, you're looking at anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. 6 months would be doing it very quickly, and 3 years would actually give you a good chance to do a good process. Lots of technical considerations. You need accountants, lawyers, financial planners, co-op developers, business planners, a whole slew of people, bankers, credit union managers, capitalization issues. So there's a whole series of issues that need to be addressed through this process. And then the succession process is actually creating a step-by-step process that's unique and targeted to that particular business to make sure that all of those issues are addressed. So some of the key success factors that are required here, trained co-op developers that actually know how the succession works, know enough about co-op development and the different processes that are required, and the resources to actually pay them. In some cases, with a business succession, there's enough resources within the business. Depending on the model and the kind of business that's happening, that may or be more or less challenging. Promoting understanding of the co-op model. At this stage, most business owners don't think about the co-op model as an option because they don't have the experience of it. Adequate time and money to allocate to this, as I said, can come from the business owner. Often, though, if you're looking at community resources or workers' resources, there aren't huge amounts of resources that those folks have at the beginning of this process. Engaging all the stakeholders and making sure there's really some leadership within the co-op, and there's a willing owner. The ones that have been really successful, in my knowledge, are the ones in which the owner is really committed to the process. Doesn't mean it's always going to go through, but you really need an owner that's committed to the process. And then, of course, good communications within all of the parties. In terms of some of the post-conversion resources, you need additional training. The comments I made earlier in the previous session about, the need for time, resources, formalization, and knowledge, all of that transfers directly into this. Board governance understanding, relationships with the new owner. Knowledge transfer is vital. Small businesses, the existing owners play key roles in that business. You have to figure out how to transform that structure, make sure that the knowledge that's in that business is passed on to the cooperative in an effective way. And of course, the conventional financial and legal advice is required, and access to capital. You can't do this without access to capital, and again, workers and small community organizations have particular challenges in terms of getting capital. So in terms of the last, just to close off, some of the barriers and promotion, we need to identify succession opportunities early enough, and doing that so that we can get the proper process in place to address this situation, and really promotion of this model to small business owners. Without a clear, targeted information approach to small business owners, the opportunity of this will pass the cooperative sector by. Thank you.
I did one. You don't have it? That's fine. I have it on a stick, but that's fine. It's all right. I have it right here in front of me. I can use it. You want to give me your stick? Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. No, that's okay. I will speak. I can just do it from here. I mean, it's nothing that I can't.
Sorry about that, folks. We thought it was already on the laptop, but I guess not.
And that's all right, because there's nothing on there that we can't talk about. And okay, thank you very much for having me here. I hope that I can help answer some questions later on, and just talk to you a little bit about Careforce and what we've gone through. We've just been asked to talk about our successes, our challenges, and just the process that we went through to become a worker co-op. The one thing would have been up on the slide is just to talk a little bit about who we are. We actually, I'm nervous, so I'll try and slow down. We are a private home care agency. We provide home care to anyone who needs it. We're private, so we're not government supported in any way. A lot of our clients are veterans, so we do work with Veterans Affairs. We do work with Workers' Compensation Board. So that's, but a lot of our clients also come through the private sector, referred by discharge planners, hospitals, that kind of thing. We do everything from a 2-hour shift, that's our minimum, and that's rare in this industry, to a 24-hour shift, palliative. We have 2 nurses on staff who supervise our caregivers. We have about 60 caregivers now. When we started, we had about 20 to 25. We've been a worker co-op since 2008, and I'm going to start to look at my notes so that you get the whole picture. So we are private care. We're rural. We are a 24-hour service. We provide service 24 hours a day. So we're on call 24 hours a day. Our business provides a lot of challenges that I'm sure most businesses have. But anyway, we have about 60 employees now. We have more than that many clients. Our business has tripled since we started. We're quick to respond to cases when somebody calls and they need somebody that day. Sometimes we most often can do that. And again, that's rare in our industry. We're on call 24 hours a day. I said that. Okay. So what was the impulse? Why did we become a co-op? Really, it was a combination of maybe 3 things. We had a seller who was looking for an exit strategy. He had some other interests, and he was no longer interested in running this business. He had just owned it for a couple years. The one thing about Careforce is that it was started in 1990, so it had been around for a long time. It had a good reputation, and I think that was an important factor for us in our continued success. The seller had a co-op history, so he was already aware that this was an option for him, and so he brought it up to the workers. And we were lucky enough to have a co-op developer nearby. Peter was involved in this whole process. The owner spoke to Peter. Peter came to the workers, and that was just before I went there. They actually started this back in 2006. And after a lot of talking, they decided, yes, it's a good idea. And they decided that over a period of time, through payroll deductions, they would buy shares. And when I came in the end of 2007, I guess, they had just realized that this is going to take a really long time. They had the new owners, the workers, had a different philosophy of how they wanted to do business, and they felt they didn't really have enough control. So they wanted to figure out how can we make this work so that we can do business the way we want to do business and make the decisions that we want to make without having somebody else who has the majority of share of the company telling us what to do. So that's when, again, Peter came in. I think they had done a lot of governance sessions and strategic planning and a lot of that in the beginning, but it just wasn't going to work this way. So Peter came back and helped us figure out a strategy for making this happen a lot sooner. The owner was very skeptical that 14 workers could possibly gather the funds to make this happen, but we proved him wrong. And Peter was aware of a number of financing options for us. We couldn't go to regular institutions, financial institutions. They really didn't understand the co-op model. We went to the Business Development Corporation locally. Nobody really seemed to want to take a chance on 14 women who knew nothing about business to take over this business. So, so Peter found some funding for us. We got funding through the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, and we had to raise about almost $200,000. Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, we got funding through CAKE, which is the Canadian Alternative Investment Cooperative. I know of a credit union. The credit unions have been incredible in supporting us through this. We also had to figure out how, in order for them to give us this money, we had to invest ourselves. They wanted to make sure that we knew that that we thought enough about this business that we could put some money into it. And again, we were able to arrange that our workers receive, and that's a $2,500 contribution from each worker. We were able to do that through a loan. Each member who wanted to become an owner, or each worker who wanted to become an owner, had to take out a loan. And they did that through the credit union, and they're still, most of them, paying it back through payroll deduction. So there was no risk to the credit union. We're paying it back. We'll buy out the shares as people leave. So we were able to raise $40,000, get $40,000 that way. So we had enough funding to buy the business, and we went forward. Had we not known, I mean, I don't think this would have been an option, and I'm not sure that the business would have sold otherwise. So that would have been 20, 25 workers who would have been maybe without work. All right, we're just moving right along here. Some of the challenges for us, I guess, were getting people involved, really even understanding what we needed to do to run the business, learning how to go forward, learning the accounting system. I spent many weekend and most nights there for the first probably 2 years trying to learn the business and knowing when to make decisions. When do you add more staff? When we started, there were 2 office people. We have 6 in there now. And it was a long time. We probably waited way too long before we added new people to help us, but we were afraid. We were afraid to make decisions sometimes. And that was just because we were still learning. And you worry about your business changing and not being aware yet. You haven't learned the fluctuations, and that yes, there's an ebb and a flow, and things will get better when they die down. So we felt we needed to raise awareness in the community. Although the business itself had been there since 1990, we were still always amazed at how many people didn't know it existed. We would talk to people and say, I wish I'd known about you 5 years ago when my mother was sick, so we realized we can't assume that people are going to know we exist. In the past, there was very little advertising. It was kind of a hobby business for the owner. So everything was word of mouth. So we had to find some funding to do some marketing, and so we went and found some money through a number of grants. We were able to get $25,000. We applied for a CDI grant, Canadian Cooperative Development Initiatives grant through the federal government. With that, we did a growth feasibility study. We did a marketing branding strategy so that we were able to produce new marketing materials, brochures, website, that kind of thing. So we were able to spend that money very wisely. We received $10,000 from the Co-operators through a grant. And again, that went on marketing, advertising, website. We received $10,000, and all of this is money that we had applied for, trying to look for money. Nova Scotia Co-op Council, we had an idea that we wanted to do Alzheimer cafes in our community. It was a model that they were doing in Europe, and it was very successful, and we had been wanting to do something, and this was what we decided we wanted to do. So we now run Alzheimer cafes in our community. Those are run on Tuesday afternoons with the money that we received from the Co-op Council. We also just did a human through the Nova Scotia Economic Development WIPC program, a human resources program, which they tell me is $12,000 value. So that, again, was free money. And we just received another $1,500 through a competition through the Co-op Council to do a family and caregiver and education series through the Alzheimer's Society at our home, so at our office. So those are, I mean, the challenges are huge. I haven't mentioned a lot of them, but we feel like we've been very successful. I think the biggest thing is our reputation. We want to be a home care provider of choice, but also an employer of choice in the community. And we're doing that, I think. I've had people leave us because it's difficult for us to guarantee hours. Our clients get placed in long-term care, they die, and then our caregivers are left without hours until we can get new clients and build things up. So there isn't that stability for them. That's probably one of our major issues. So we've decided that we've had people come back to us and they've left and gone somewhere else and said, we've seen how other people treat their employees. We really want to come back and work for you. So we're really proud of that. We've paid out most of our loans, so we think that's pretty successful. We have a good reputation in the community. We have employees who enjoy working with us. We're starting an RSP program for our employees. We just did a session this week, starting in January. We have increased wages for our staff. So I think, and we've also taken a leadership role this year with the International Year of the Cooperatives to bring co-ops in our community together to do some group events and memorandum of understanding. I think that in the future, every year we'll do something together. So giving back is part of the success that we are able to do. We have grown 276% in revenue since 2008. I guess our other, and I'm almost out of time, but our other focus, I think, is policies and procedures. We spent a lot of time muddling through things, and now we know that in order to make us worth something, either to someone else or as, you know, to sell to other new co-op members coming in, we need to work on policies and procedures and have all of those things in place. We're also, one more thing I'm really proud of, we're doing a training and orientation program. We have developed a CARE program. It's a Caregiver Achievement and Recognition of Education program. It's an online orientation and training and employee skills assessments and evaluations. We've worked really hard on those. The Caregiver Achievement and Recognition of Education program will allow our caregivers to earn points for some of the training that they do either with us or outside the organization. At the end of the year, we have to approve that, of course, but at the end of the year, those points are worth $1 value. So it's like a bonus to them. They're investing in their education, we're investing in their education. So there's all kinds of other things I could tell you, but be happy to speak to you after if there's anything in particular that you want to know. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of ups and downs, and but it's the success, I think, has made it all worthwhile. So thank you.
I'm going to keep my own time too so that I don't get rushed at the end. My name is Bill Zimmerman. I'm one of the founding members of the Acadia Cinema Cooperative, and I'm pleased to see that my slides actually made it up. The interesting thing is that we acted as a community to save a building. The picture of the fellow you see there is Al Whittle, who ran that theater for 48 years. As he said, he has a very thin resume. But he ran it from 1952 until he retired in the year 2000. And when he retired in the year 2000, the owners of the building were actually in St. John, New Brunswick, and it was the last theater they had left. They had had theaters all over the Maritimes, and gradually they faded away as the empire took over. And this was the last one that they owned. And it was always profitable. Al had made sure of that. But they weren't interested in trying to find another Al Whittle, because they weren't going to find another Al Whittle, and there was no way that that theater was going to keep going the way it was without an Al Whittle. So they closed the building. He retired in 2000. The building went on the market. At the same time, a lot of people who really liked films in Wolfville decided that they wanted to keep seeing films, and so formed a film society. We tried to get Acadia University to cooperate and let us show the films there, but they weren't interested. So we ended up actually renting a screen at the Empire. We could not keep up with the demand as a film society. We started off with one screening in the small theater, and Al Whittle was constantly involved in advising us. He said, you're going to slit your throat or lose your shirt, or slit your shirt and lose your throat, or something like that, all the time. We filled that theater. We filled 2 theaters. We filled 3 theaters. Yeah, I'm not ready to move. There's a lot, if you know. And so we suddenly had a film society that was about the 5th largest film society in Canada, cooperating with the Toronto International Film Festival. And first of all, no one could figure out why. But second of all, we were selling our tickets in the lobby of the old theater. Al still was managing it for the owners, because they could never get a client who would buy the building that could figure out how to make any money out of it. The last proposal that went by the boards was to turn it into a hotel. It's what they call in Calgary façadomy, where you keep the outside of the building so that it looks like it used to look, but everything inside is totally different and does something else. They couldn't figure out how to make that work. So Al came up to us in the lobby and said, it's for sale again. And a bunch of us in the Film Society looked at each other. By the way, we're all too old to be taking over a business at this point. We're all over 65. We took a look at each other and we said, we think we can make this work, because we know we can show films and make it work. We're doing it right now. And if we can do it here, where there's a history of this theater, with Al Whittle's history, we're pretty sure we can make it work. So, quickly now, I wish I had a pointer. See that boy's head there on the bicycle? Right over his head behind is a building. That in 1911, good laser pointer. I'll point on this one because I can see it. Right here is the building that was in front of the Opera House, which was built in 1911. And so really this was last year was our 100th anniversary of a performing venue on that site. And interestingly enough, the first thing that Opera House was used for, before it was even completed, they had a meeting in there. They had some entertainment, but the big item in that night was they were reporting the election results live. They had a telegraph line and a telephone into the theater, so they were reporting the results on the provincial election live before the theater was actually open. And that also was the town hall in Wolfville from 1911 to 1923. We didn't find that out until we started researching for the 100th anniversary. But so this building has a long history, or this site has a long history in the town of Wolfville as an important place. And I'm just going to show some other. This is the inside of the Opera House. You can imagine them announcing election results on that stage. This is what happened in 1947. No, this happened in, I'm sorry, this is 1923. The wooden building that had the town hall was torn down, and this building was put up in the front. And you can see these are the announcements of the films that were playing. Here's the Orpheum marquee, which it became at that point. There was a telegraph office on one side, various businesses on the other, and the MP had his office upstairs. And eventually the member of the legislature had an office upstairs. So this building was right downtown and fairly important. And in fact, when it was built, and when maybe it changed in 1923, the town hall moved out because the guy that rebuilt the building wanted more money, because it was now a brick fireproof structure. And, you know, he thought he should get more money for it. So they moved town hall down the street, and the business community complained that the town hall had been moved out of the downtown, because this building was really the core of downtown Wolfville. 1947, they tore down the wooden opera house and built a fireproof theater in back. And they also did this to the front of the building, which I frankly think was a travesty. I like the old building better. But you can see the crowds out there. This is 1947. The new theater opened, the first theater in Eastern Canada with radiant heat in the floor. So it was quite a landmark in town. So it continued to be a core landmark in the town. Here's what it looked like in the later years. Not quite as elegant, still functioning. Actually, by the time it closed, it had 3 screens. But our co-op, as you saw, we managed to get $120 worth of shares sold, $120,000 worth of shares sold within 3 months of offering those shares to the public. This was formed as a non-profit co-op. We looked at the possibility of having a society purchase the building and operate it. But we decided that did not give people the kind of ownership that we wanted to see. We wanted the people in the community to own that building in every possible sense of the word, not have some society that you give money to and they own it and you can walk away. And we also decided to set the share value at $100 each so that just about anyone could afford a share. And we had people bringing their pension checks in to buy shares. We had students, a student came up from Acadia and said, you know, he said, I realized I spent that much money at the liquor store on Friday night, so I can certainly afford to buy a share. Now, the big problem we had was that the building was closed from 2000 until 2004, so we lost a whole generation of Acadia students, because this building had been a very important part of the Acadia experience. And we wanted it to be that again, but we had a hard time capturing those students again. Anyhow, so we formed the co-op in December 2002. In 2003, we managed to buy the building from the owner. Now, Just Us came in with us as partners in the ownership. They run a cafe in the front, we run the theater in back. And it made it easier for us to make that purchase. But what really made it easy is that the owner of the building, the company in St. John, gave us 1 year interest-free on the mortgage. They gave us a very good price if we would do something to acknowledge Al Whittle's part in the success of that building. So it was a no-brainer for us to name it the Al Whittle Theater. And that tells me how slow I am. Anyhow, we were able to receive an ACOA SCIF grant in 2004, which is really what paid for the renovations that we had to do. Because in addition to buying the building, we had to renovate it. We had to gut it and start all over again. And we made some very conscious decisions about the facility we wanted. It wanted to show films, but we also wanted to make it a good venue for live performance. And we've been very successful in that. One of the things that almost kept us from getting that SCIF grant was the failure of the Atlantic Theater Festival. Because the Atlantic Theater Festival had soaked up a tremendous amount of government money and was constantly going from one bankruptcy to another. And the people from ACOA said to us, how can you possibly make this work when the Atlantic Theater Festival failed? And our riposte was, we've got a film program that will provide at least half of the business that we need to make this building work. It's going, it's functioning, it's operational. The Atlantic Theater Festival never could identify a steady stream of revenue other than government grants, and they never owned the building. And that was one of their big downfalls. We were getting the building. That's a real asset. And so we finally convinced ACOA to begin the work. We started in May, as soon as they gave us the go-ahead, but they didn't announce it to the public until August. So people saw us spending all kinds of money and couldn't figure out where we were getting it. But we weren't allowed to say anything about it, which was embarrassing because we were trying to be very responsible as a cooperative and making sure that we could do what we said we were going to do. The government made that hard. We opened the theater in November of 2004, and this is the opening night. Actually, we had contributions from Acadia University in the town to help us renovate the marquee, to bring it back to its former glory. This now appears on every bit of Acadia University's advertising. because it says Acadia. And also, this is a tremendous asset to the town. Not only is it a movie theater, which most small towns don't have, but it provides opportunities for all kinds of other events. We have now a night kitchen series that runs on the first Saturday of every month that sells out every month, that brings all kinds of musicians to the stage, sometimes for the first time. And if any of you have ever heard of the Huffman Brothers, this is one of the places where they performed when they were really sort of getting started as a performing act. This is the building now. We got a second grant from ACOA in 2009. We created a second venue upstairs. We did some improvements in the theater that we were not able to afford initially. But the big thing we did was we began the transition in 2009 to digital cinema. And for any of you who are paying attention to what's going on in the movie business these days, theaters have lost the ability to get 35mm films. The digital transition has killed many small movie theaters throughout North America. We positioned ourselves in 2009. We managed to get the final piece of equipment in this September, so now we're fully digital. And as of June 30th, 2012, the Acadia Cinema Cooperative has 696 shareholders, a total of 4,368 shares, and we're doing just fine. One of the biggest challenges we had was there was an attempt, we made a mistake with hiring our first manager for the theater. It's only a half-time position, but he was losing us more business than he was gaining us. And we finally had to take over and work without a hired theater manager for 4 years. I did that as the manager. We're back on track with an excellent new manager now who's really doing great things for us. And the other problem we had was somewhere in there people began to think that we were a charity. And I mean people on the board. And they started taking the view of us as a charitable organization. And we aren't a charity. We don't want people to give us money. We want people to invest in the co-op. And our investments go toward capital improvements, toward paying off our mortgage, towards making sure that we have the equipment we need to function. And we want to keep it that way. We are proud of what we've been able to accomplish there. And I think the community recognizes a tremendous asset. People move to Wolfville because of this theater. And we're the fastest growing community in the Maritimes in terms of population growth. And we're one of those rural communities that's managed to make it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the community engagement and the community investment in the community. Thank you. Questions later. You're talking about funerals. It's
Et bonjour, moi je suis Bertie Leblanc, je suis un membre du conseil d'administration de la coop de Chéticamp, puis je vais essayer de vous expliquer comment la coop a fait l'achat d'un funérail de la région. La coop qui célèbre 75 ans aujourd'hui, cette année, a été incorporée en 1937. On a maintenant au-delà de 2600 membres propriétaires, puis on a des ventes de 12 millions par année. Nos services comprennent les épiceries, la quincaillerie, on a un home hardware et maintenant un salon funéraire. Les ristournes sont au-delà de 10 millions de dollars retournés aux membres pendant nos dernières 20 ans. On a une population desservie, environ 5600 personnes, mais ça part de Magré, qui est à ce bout de site, aller jusqu'à Dingwall. On est dans le côté d'Inverness du Cap-Breton. Ça, c'est un portrait du salon funéraire. C'était une entreprise privée qui est devenue propriétaire de la coop maintenant depuis 1996. Mais ce n'est pas une coopérative. Mais c'est ménagé, je pense, par le mouvement coop. Ça fait 40 ans que c'est à Chédican, puis c'était un bonhomme qui a décidé de se retirer, puis il cherchait quelqu'un pour l'acheter, mais il voulait quelqu'un de la communauté, parce que il voulait pas, il avait des bandes engagées, puis il voulait les garder, puis ça fait que on a environ 50 funérailles par an. C'est pas gros, mais le bâtiment a 2655 pieds carrés, avec 2 salles pour famille. Mais là, maintenant, les incinérations comprennent maintenant 40% des funérailles. C'est bon, mais c'est pas... OK. Ça fait que pourquoi est-ce que la coop de Chédican a acheté le salon funéraire? Ben, OK. Comme j'ai dit auparavant, le propriétaire voulait se prendre sa retraite, puis il avait pas de réserve, de relève. Il y avait personne qui voulait l'acheter de la communauté. Ça fait qu'il était un gros membre de la coop et il préférait laisser son entreprise dans les mains de la communauté que de la vendre à quelqu'un à l'extérieur de la communauté. Fait qu'il a approché la coop et nous autres, la coop, on était en bonne situation financière et se sentait capable de sécuriser ce service pour la communauté. OK, ça fait qu'on avait beaucoup de défis et de résolutions en vue. La coop de Chédican ne connaissait pas comment gérer un salon funéraire. Ça, c'était la première affaire. Le propriétaire avait une équipe forte au salon et il voulait protéger ses emplois. Ça fait que nous autres, c'était bon pour nous autres, ça nous gardait du monde là qui avait rené le business avant, puis nous autres, on le financerait puis on le ménagerait. En ce que la membership serait voulant d'investir dans un salon funéraire, ça, c'était une grosse question. Mais le membership était bien voulant de protéger ce service et de le garder sous le contrôle de la communauté. Fait qu'en ce moment, la coop de Chédican pourrait se mettre financièrement d'acheter le salon. La coop était à une bonne situation financière et le propriétaire cherchait seulement un prix raisonnable en échange pour en sauvegarder les emplois et le garder le salon dans les mains de la communauté. Fait que pour le financement, on a approché la caisse pour emprunter 300 000 $, et nous autres, on a mis, la coop elle-même a mis 200 000 $ pour finir l'achat. OK. Les succès et les positifs, c'était pas mal tout positif parce que on avait quand même gardé ça dans les mains du monde de Chédican, puis un service qui était nécessaire. Le contrôle du salon funéraire est essentiellement dans les mains de la communauté, car la grande majorité des gens de la région sont membres et propriétaires de la coop de Chédican. Le coût du service est resté bas raisonnable, car le salon fait partie de la coopérative. Le profit généré par le salon est réinvesti dans le business ou retourné aux membres de la coop en ristourne à la fin de l'année. Les emplois ont été sauvés. Le salon a récemment été rénové il y a 5 ans. puis ça marche très bien. Le monde est très content, puis nous autres, on est très contents. Ça fait que ceci va terminer mon rapport. Je peux pas parler comme Dieu, moi, puis je peux pas, mais ça fait que je vous en remercie bien de m'avoir écouté. Puis, s'il y aura des questions plus tard, si moi je peux pas les répondre, il y a du monde à côté qui peuvent les répondre. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Well, thank you very much to all the presenters. I think they've given us lots of food for thought, and I'm sure you're waiting with lots of questions. But I think we saw a lot of diversity, a lot of different situations, but really I think what's common in all of the three presentations is that co-ops really do make a difference in communities, and particularly in rural communities.